We're gonna grab that Phoenix box just in case.
5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we're live. This is The Human Condition. I'm Vince Orlando.
I'm Steve.
I'm Sean Davis.
And our guest couldn't be with us tonight. 'Tis the season for sickness. I'm actually clearing up thanks to your suggestion for the neti pot and that tea, man. I'm telling you, that robust, that with the neti pot was disgusting, right?
Yeah.
I was standing over the sink like a child, and I got water pouring on it. But it did some magic, and then I drank this robust right after, and there's magic in it. Like it says on the box. Like I thought it was false advertising, but it says there's something to the effect of magic or whatever it is. It's some African herb, and
Everyone in the East drinks that. My martial arts instructor was the one, like I had a cold. He's like, get the robust tea. And I was like, robust? Like, how do we spell this? And like, I got it wrong a few times. And then finally I saw it and I grabbed it. And like, literally after the first cup, like, breathe, you know?
It was instant. Like
it was instant, yeah.
I felt different, so I'll be drinking more of it tonight. But yeah, I guess we're plugging that today too, robust tea. But
well, I'm definitely gonna try it because whatever the hell you guys got, I got it now.
I'm telling you,
I woke up yesterday with a sore throat and drainage and all that. It sucks.
It's at Whole Foods. That's where Sean told me to get it. I couldn't find it anywhere else. But anyway, so today we're talking about instant gratification and the human. Not so much instant gratification, because instant gratification feels good. We can all admit that we all like to be gratified. It's how does instant gratification as a perpetual goal, as what we strive for on a daily basis, how or does that perpetuate suffering? I believe, my opinion and my experience is that the need to always be instantly gratified does perpetuate suffering, because it's just not possible. We talked about this a lot in the last episode. You're going to experience loss. You're going to experience pain. You don't have to suffer through that, but life is going to throw curveballs at you that you just can't control. So this goes along with attachment. If you're attached to the idea that you can always achieve instant gratification, which is a heavy concept in addiction, right? The addictive mind wants to be gratified instantly by whatever means necessary, and the addictive mind will find a way to do that through whatever the compulsion or substance is.
You're a dopamine machine.
Right.
And once you get that hit, like, you're always going to want it.
And then it's gone, right? And then you have to keep fighting. So the misguided perception that you can always feel that good, it causes suffering, because you're always going to seek it, and it's just not there for you all the time. So that's my opinion. Drug users.
Well, they call it chasing the dragon, right?
Chasing the dragon.
The first high is good, the second one's not so good, and you just keep trying to get back to it
over
and over and over.
Because the reality is, it felt good, right? I mean, it did something to you. It released that dopamine, and you got to feel that. And why would you not want to feel that way all the time? I know I'd like to, but it's just not. It's not reality, right? It's not. We as much as we should want to feel instantly gratified, we have to, in my opinion, right? This is just my opinion, my experience. We have to learn to appreciate the journey towards that. Because if we can appreciate what it takes to get to those peak experiences, then you don't need it instantly. You can wait. You can hold off. Easier said than done. I know I was a slave to my need for instant gratification my entire life.
Right here.
Right? It's so easier said than done.
And it doesn't help the corporations and, well, let's just stick with corporations. They're there doing this to us on purpose. Like your place that you go betting, the casino, right? Mm-hmm. That's a gratification place because hundreds of psychiatrists got together and looked into Pavlov and all those kind of things and how to hit that dopamine trigger for you. And every single thing that we're touching right now, Facebook, phones in general, social media, those are all geared.
Let me get that like.
I feel so good. Look how many people liked my post. That was amazing. Ooh.
And on the flip side, when it doesn't happen,
what did I do wrong?
I'm
going to have to get on here and make more posts.
Yeah, So yes, my opinion, and I think you agree, and Shauna.
Yeah, the guest, you know, he's not here, but the idea that he brought up was that people over time, either through the industrial consumer age, have been able to get things quicker and quicker. And he used this example where, like, he was chopping wood. He got like 14 acres and everything, and he was back there chopping wood for the fireplace. And he felt gratified after he got done doing it, and a sense of accomplishment just for having firewood. And a lot of the things that a long time ago people used to do, whether it's like farming or hunting for their food, and they had a sense of accomplishment by doing these things. Over time, in the industrialized process, like, things became quicker, McDonald's came around, like, fast food is another form of instant gratification. Why wait till I get home and cook my own meal? I don't have time for all that. I need it now. I need it now. I need it now, because we live in a society and a time where, there's like people's thinking is that I don't have enough time.
And that's a huge reason that a lot of us are affected by anxiety.
Right.
Well, why should I have to wait? And this is and again, psychologists in corporations have gathered together over time, and this is a human thing, right? We were constantly looking for the least path of resistance, and we do want things now. When we're a child, we cry, we want our bottle, we want it now, right? We don't think about it, but we are programmed that way to want things now. So it's not an unnatural aspect of our being, right? But the powers that be do play on the fact that they know we want things now, and essentially, if we haven't been raised under organized attachment with our caregivers, well, we're not programmed to delay gratification. They did the marshmallow test, which it was a real interesting test. And they did it in multiple ways too, with pretzel sticks and whatever. But the gist of it is they took this control group of kids, and they put a marshmallow in front of each one of them. And they said, you can go ahead and eat that marshmallow now, but if you wait 15 minutes, you get another one. You'll double what's in front of you. So the majority of the kids were able to wait, some by distracting themselves. They would look around, they would fidget, they would do these different things to try to take their mind off the fact that they really wanted to eat that marshmallow. And then there was, I don't know if it was 40% of the group, they just couldn't wait. No, that marshmallow's there right now, I'm eating that shit right now. I didn't say that, but they ate it. So they followed these kids throughout their entire lives. And lo and behold, the kids that could not delay their gratification, they had problems with addiction. They weren't able to make competent, grounded decisions because they were unable to delay their gratification. So that they were attached to having things now, and because of that, they were led down a path of chasing the dragon.
It's a learned behavior. Delayed gratification. Like, if you're brought up as a single child and your mother is just there and gives you everything that you want every second of your life, then by the time you're 5 or 6, you're not going to be able to delay that gratification. That's where it comes back to the caregivers.
Yeah, that's where it comes. And if you got a single mom who's not there, and you got the TV as a babysitter, or what I mean,
it's easier,
or whatever, or you don't get your dad works all the time, and when he comes home, he just wants to be left alone. So you're left seeking out these other avenues of dopamine. How do I feed the dopamine, right? But the thing is, the corporations play on it. They know it. This right here is designed to keep us engaged. I remember as a kid, we used to have to wait for Saturday cartoons, and it was such a big deal. Like or wrestling on the weekend, and I got to stay up late to watch wrestling. I had to wait. I remember as a kid, though, there was this one time where we had just gotten a color TV. We didn't have a lot of money, but I remember when we first got a color TV, and it was a Saturday, and Godzilla was on, one of those old Godzilla movies.
Gojira.
I can't remember which one it was, but I didn't want to leave because I was going to miss this, and we had to. I can't remember what my mom had to do, but she had to do something. So Saturday got disrupted. So I remember pulling the plug out of the TV. Because in my mind, if I pull the plug, then it'll still be there when I get back. So nobody taught me that. And you know, my mom laughed. She said that's not how it works. And I thought for sure when I got home it was still going to be on.
Right.
The point of that is that was a natural thing. I didn't want to have to be pulled away from this. I wanted it to be there when I got back. So that drive is what led to things like the VCR and DVDs and streaming. And now it's
DVR.
crazy. Kids don't have to wait for shit.
No.
Type it in, it's there.
Again, instant
Immediately.
gratification. 100%.
Immediately.
I want to watch every episode of the Thundercats right now.
Right
Get
now.
on Netflix and boom, it's there. So there's probably many kids out there right now that have no concept of waiting to watch something, unless they're into, you know, the boxing sporting events that are literally timed events.
Even those if you miss them, you can come
You can
back.
still come back,
It's DVR.
So now change it to like goals, careers, life paths. You know, when you're working towards a goal or a business, you just start a business and stuff, and it doesn't pop off right away. The lack of maybe expectation could affect the gratification. You know how many people are out there like just they're trying to find their niche or do something original, and they're putting everything in motion, and they're not getting success right away, and then you get caught up in this struggle, and you feel like, you know, like, when is it going to happen?
The world's
for me?
against me.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
when is it going to happen for me? How is it going to happen? Why isn't it happening? You know, and then we find excuses of why it's not happening. You know, because you're not getting that gratification.
I can actually speak to that because I was brought up as an only child, and my mom and dad were great. I got everything that I wanted as fast as could be expected, right? So I grew up with no patience, and my best friend, my wife, people that know me really well will say that I have absolutely no patience waiting for things that I want. So what that's done to me is made me search for ways around it to accept the fact that things are going to take a long time, but it also has made me very anxious. And I hate waiting for things. And I still do that. I still hate waiting for things. I want things to happen now.
Yeah.
If I'm interested in it, I want it now. But I think we'll get to this in a few minutes. The way around that is not just drugs or alcohol or anything like that. There's actually changes that you have to make to yourself to undo that good raising, actually.
Well, it is. It is because there's nothing malicious in there, right? And my mom isn't. I can go back and say a lot of things about the way that I was raised, but there was no male intent. And there's mistakes that I've made as a parent, and there's no male intent there. But are there some ways that I am that have trickled down to the kids that they're going to have to battle with later in life? Mm-hmm. Not because I was malicious. You know, I love my kids more than anything, but I don't always get it right. And our parents were in a much different era, right? And based on how they were raised, you know, I know my mom came from, you know, not the greatest situation, broken home, and my dad was abused really, really bad. They did the best they could with what they had. But I you know, if I were a crybaby, I could go back and point the finger and say, well, this is wrong and this is wrong, and I'm like this because of that. Well, no, it's just how it is. So I don't think that, no, your parents didn't raise you wrong. It's how they were. And it really is out of love, right? You think you're doing this out of love. I want to give my kid what they want right now because, well, it feels good to me also. And that's kind of codependence, you know, which is, unless you know what that is, you don't know that you have to work through it. But because when I do this for my kid, it makes me feel good, and there's this exchange of dopamine. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's an instant gratification between the two, and it's a cycle.
You practice patience with your kids?
Yeah, and it's not always easy, but I'm so much better at it. They have made me better at it because they really test your patience. So they've made me better. But I still fail miserably. But and it is a learned behavior, and through mindfulness. Only through mindfulness I'm able to catch it and pull myself away from the reactive tendencies, more so the responsive. And that is unconditional love. But I had to be damaged in a way that made me evaluate myself to the point to where I want to be better at those things. But I can, I can still get caught up in the day and let the kids guide me down a path. And then I have to come back and say, hey, I shouldn't have reacted like that. So sometimes I don't practice patience in the moment, but I'm pretty good at coming back after the fact and saying, guys, that's not the way we're supposed to handle things. I shouldn't have raised my voice there. I could have talked to you differently. So I do, but I'm not perfect at it. I'm still very driven subconsciously by egocentric desire, and like you, I want things right now. And unless I'm mindful about the fact, well, that's not just how life is. You talked about goals, right? So an attachment to a goal is a dangerous thing, because a goal should only be, a goal is one thing, and if a goal is viewed correctly, I don't want to say correctly because everyone has their own perception, but healthily, a goal is a unit of measurement, right? You can't be attached to the outcome of that goal, because it may happen, it may not. But what a goal does for you, if you're doing it healthily, is it allows you to measure where you are in relation to achieving that goal. So you can go back and you can say, well, I'm still far off, so I need to adjust this, this, and this. Or I'm getting closer to my goal, so I must be doing something right. So all it is a method of evaluation. Now people will take, people will take a goal and take it at face value. I need to make this amount of money by the time I'm 25, and they get attached to that, and they don't use it as a unit of measurement. It's just the thing they need to achieve. And then they either do or they don't, and because they're attached to that outcome. So for me, I needed to go to Hollywood, I needed to be in movies, I achieved that, then I felt empty because there was nothing beyond that. It wasn't a unit of measurement. It's, this will make me happy. Once this happens, then I don't have to worry about anything else.
Were you instantly gratified?
In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways.
When you got to Hollywood, did it happen for you quickly?
I remember the first time I got recognized when I did 90210. It was a tiny feature, one of the smallest things I ever did, but everybody watched it. And I remember my answering machine, because we still had those, and blowing up. And I remember hanging out on set with Tiffany Amber Thiessen and who else was it? Tori Spelling, whatever, Brian Austin Green. Who else were in the scenes? I can't remember Noah, the guy who played Noah, but I remember being there in that environment, and yes, that was adrenaline like I've never felt. But it went away, right? I went home, and then I didn't work again for 6 months, and then I felt myself feeling empty because, well, why am I not doing this every day? You know what I mean?
And then in the 6 months, were you grinding, or were you just
I was grinding,
having faith that everything would work out, or just grinding?
I didn't know what faith was. I just had to grind more.
Yeah.
And something's wrong with me because I'm not working the very next day.
And Vinny was way faster than he is right now. Like, he was like, just, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this.
It was a sickness. It was a sickness.
Okay.
It really was.
All right. I'm here to see you guys. Hurry up. Let's hug. Let's say hello. All right. I got to go to this and meet this person. All right. Chop, 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 chop.
It was bad. It was really bad, and that still lives in me, right? It's not. It doesn't drive me anymore. Not in the way that it used to. It can still manifest, but it's still very much a part of my subconscious programming that I have to work. But like you said, you gotta put in the work to offset this, because the go-to mechanism it's very automated.
So we have a comment on Facebook. Norman Etten said, last week I was getting coffee and its Keurig machine takes 15 seconds, and he found himself yelling, "Come on, hurry up, come on."
I can agree with the sentiment.
Yeah, just about little things like that. And it'll drive you crazy if you don't identify that happens to you and take a step back and say, all right, it's cool. I don't have to have my Keurig coffee right away. I can wait the 15 seconds.
Be patient, Norm. Be patient.
Hang in there, bro.
It's funny because I told Norm the subject that we were talking about on Sunday, and I told him that it's what we have lost.
Yeah.
And he gave me a big hug and was like, "But just always remember what we've gained." And I was like, oh, I didn't really look at it like that. And it was interesting, and it's interesting because I told you guys, my boy committed suicide last night, and he probably the best personal trainer, nutrition, dietitian in the country. Just a lot of gifts, and he always struggled trying to put everything together. He was always trying to match something, and it was all almost like he was stuck in the material world, trying to achieve goals of the material world. And I was always like, just like, it's gonna happen for you. Like, there's no way that it can't happen for you. Trust me. He came up with this one idea like a year ago, and I don't know why he never followed through with it. It was kind of corny, but he called it Cooking in Calvin's, and he was gonna do a cooking show in Calvin Klein underwear. I mean, he was just jacked, but he was like
people watch that.
Yeah,
shit.
but he was like a real
niche market.
like he was like a chef without actually going to chef school, and he would do these meal prep things. I'm like, dude, you gotta like launch that, man. That is great. I'm like, dude, like that's genius for like people who are doing meal prep, who are into fitness and all that stuff. And he was always like it wasn't happening fast enough, and I would always be like, miracles happen.
Yeah.
But the gratification wasn't coming fast enough.
And when you say the miracle, when you told me the miracle will happen, be patient, fuck you. Back in the day, I don't want to hear that shit. I got to have it now because I lived in a place of lack and limitation. If I didn't get it now, then it would never come because somebody else would grab it.
I'd always ask you, when is the miracle going to happen? I wouldn't be like, fuck you. I'd be like, well, how long do I got to wait for this miracle? Give me a time date, a week or two or a month, let me know what I'm working with.
What are we talking about here?
Because if you gave me a date, I could have enough faith to the date.
To the date.
But if I don't have a date,
if it doesn't happen then something's wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Right.
And then it would completely fuck my thinking, and then I would be off in like, then I'd just say fuck it. And then once you got the mantra, fuck it, like it's hard. You got to
switch.
You got to rewire that. I mean, it's
fuck it button.
Yeah, it's the addict alcoholic theme song, but like even non-addict alcoholics have that theme song.
All or nothing.
Yeah.
All or nothing thinking, man. It was, for me, all or nothing. The littlest thing could set me off into this deep, deep trauma that made me want to disappear off the face of the planet. The smallest thing, just it didn't matter what. I didn't get an A on that test. And now I say, like, not consciously, but at my core, I'm inadequate. I'm no good as a human being. I'm a piece of shit. I'm always going to be a piece of shit. Like, it was, and it didn't take alcohol or drugs to do that.
No.
It just took that little bit of stimulus and my inability to recognize when that was happening. I call it standing on the top of a 10-story burning building. So if a building is going to get flamed up to the 10th floor, there's a progression to that. Me, I couldn't recognize the progression because we talked about high threshold for pains, right? And I had a very high threshold for pain, so I was just so busy pushing through everything, pushing through, that I couldn't see outside of here. So I didn't even know I was in pain or suffering. And then the fire would become recognizable once I was on the 10th floor, and there was 4 things I could do: fight, flight, freeze, or collapse. And this is the core of severe post-traumatic stress disorder. It's all or nothing. Typically, what I would do is I would jump off that building and let the chips fall where they may. And that might be a 2-week alcoholic bender where I break my phone, I don't want to talk to anybody, fuck the world, let me play with God and see if can you think you can kill me, motherfucker? Like that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Like really, really fucking, and then I would just snap out of it. For some reason, I would just be done. Something would click back in my brain. I would know that I'm not in danger, and I would go back into normal life. And then I would get into the ego would kick back in. You're good. You don't need help. You don't need to talk about this to anybody. And then I couldn't recognize the fire building up. What I got good at, as I learned to delay gratification, and I stopped being attached to these goals and these outcomes, and what I started to get good at through mindfulness is Well, now I can. I might not recognize the fire on the first floor, but I might see it on the third floor. And if I see it on the third floor, I can look for the fire escape. Right? I don't have to jump now. And that's the hard part is, if you're constantly chasing the dragon, if you're constantly doing that, if you're constantly seeking that dopamine fix, you won't recognize the fire. You're going to get caught on that 10th floor, and you're going to be left with the choice of fight, flight, freeze, or collapse. It's all or nothing at that point. It doesn't matter what little thing it was that sparked that. But if you don't recognize it, if you don't work to be able to recognize that, those are your choices. And people wonder why we keep coming back into the same patterns. Why me? Why me? Why me? Well, you haven't worked to fix you yet. There's some subconscious shit there that's not your fault. And your drive is not your fault. The drive towards instant gratification is not your fault. That's why this exists the way that it does, because it's such a natural human thing. To, like I said, when you're a baby,
very American.
I think it's
the stuff that we go through compared to some other countries.
This is sold in America, right?
Yep.
Like the technological revolution happened here, and then the internet happened here, and we are the kings of capitalism. It's consumerism. So this is where it's been peddled the hardest. Now, over in India, you're taught not to worry about these things so much, right? So kids are a little bit different, but we've infested most of the world with our capitalistic ways.
Well, as soon as you come out of the womb,
Yeah.
I mean,
the mobiles that are swinging over, you know what I mean? Like everything, like not the parent doesn't have to push you. Get this thing that slides back and forth, and now you're fixed on that shit. Like it constantly put the TV in front of you, but constant distraction from just being a fucking human.
Because they want your money. They want your money.
And look, and that's a natural thing too. I want to be successful. I want to make money. I know this will sell because of this, this, and this. It's pretty devious when you get a bunch of fucking psychologists together and you work out the ways in a casino to where you're going to keep that Pavlovian response going, and you don't care what the outcome is like McDonald's. I don't know if you ever saw that Michael Keaton movie about the start of McDonald's, but that was, and you can trace almost the start of most heart disease, mental disease, when they started to mass produce food, and it was McDonald's that started that. And they knew the shit that was going into the food, and the guy who stole the McDonald's concept from the brothers, he forced him out based on because they didn't want this shit in the food. I get carry, yeah. And so that was a pretty good movie. I didn't know all that, but that was the start of that whole transition, that whole right now. I need it right now. And McDonald's was the first to really push it with a mass agenda.
You have mass consumerism and you have mass suppression. The population is suppressed with all the chemicals in the food and in the water, that it's easy to control a population like that.
Yeah, because it takes away the space.
Kill your ambition.
Well, between stimulus and response, and Viktor Frankl talks about this, there's a very limited space. That space shrinks with these chemicals. That space shrinks with trauma, right? So we become reactionary rather than responsive. When that space is gone and those chemicals, I don't know if there was a mass conspiracy to do that. Maybe there was. But what I do know is what you said is accurate with the fluoride that's in the water, with the preservatives that's in the food. I think that was more of, we can save our shelf life. That translates to more dollars. But there's a certain point where you knew what the fuck you were doing, and you continued doing it for profit. Was it a mass conspiracy to keep us stupid? I don't know.
I look at it as like their intentions may not have been to start out that way, but then once they started to get the results,
and the results probably fueled the perpetuation of what they were doing. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but look, if
you gotta get on board, brother.
Yeah, but sometimes you gotta call a spade, right? I mean, maybe there is an Illuminati style group. I mean, you read some of the shit that the Rockefellers talk about, and there's definitely an agenda there, right? The IMF, and there was, especially when it came to big pharma.
Who's that one? The Bilderbergers. They have a site where they say, we meet together with the richest people on earth, and we are trying to push society this way. They admit it. outright.
See, and then
I'm not
that
saying
would
that's
be
the Illuminati or anything. It's just the wealthy with nothing else to do.
right. Everybody wants to call something something, right? But if they, I think it is a natural progression towards the rich and powerful. You can help me achieve this. And I don't even know if there's malintent, but there may be. You know what I mean? There could be malintent, or it could just be greed. I don't know. I don't know, and I don't really try to delve too much into that. I just know it exists.
I have a comment. Wayne Castle says, "Happy birthday to Vince."
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate that.
Happy birthday, Vince, also from me.
Thank you.
He says, when you have goals in a work lifetime to get where you want to be or feel like you're still not where you want to be, we all have a sense of urgency. I'm results driven and in a hurry to get where I want to be. Keep grinding, never give up. Time is precious. We only have what we have. Be grateful and you will find what you look for. I mean, shit, there was a song about that, right? I'm in a hurry to get things done.
Well, and he said this. The key word though is if you can remain grateful in that grind, because a lot of people aren't grateful. Like you said, when it doesn't happen now, they lose their gratitude because it's why the fuck isn't it now? But he said a key word: remain grateful. If you can stay grateful and say, okay, well, this is just part of the journey, and you can detach from the fact that it isn't happening right now, you can grind and you can experience delays and quote unquote failures, which are really just lessons, but you can look at them as lessons rather than failures, and you don't have to suffer, because you're not attached to it being right now.
The whole grind thing is a Michigan thing.
Thanks for the comment, by the way.
It's more of like a Midwest.
Blue collar work ethic type.
Yeah, like, when you go out west, the idea of grinding,
They're laid back as
it doesn't exist.
Well, they do it in the South, too, like the farmers and stuff.
Yeah,
They work 20-hour days.
It's just, it's just interesting how, like, when I went out west, people were more in tune with the spiritual side of things, and, like, it'll happen when it happens, and having...
You're talking Colorado out west,
Yeah,
though. You're not talking L.A. out west.
I'm not talking, no.
Because they were real laid back, too.
I lived in Long Beach. They was laid back, too, but, like, it's like...
But they still wanted it now.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to work hard to get it now.
Right. It was like...
Self-entitlement.
Yeah, but even, like, the blue-collar cats in Long Beach, like, they'll work hard and they'll party hard. But the thing is, like, there was always... I don't know... The idea of a collective is more West Coast, Western-based than, like, out here. There's so much individuality...
Yeah. You're saying they're more communist over there?
No, I mean that we work together as a collective to reach our goals if we have things in common, like the three of us doing this as a collective, and moving it forward and, getting the website and doing these things together. A lot of people don't do that. It's like one for all for one.
Well, New York is, and you can see they're polar opposites, right? Because New York is build now, build immediately, individualism. It's real Ayn Rand, the Fountainhead, for those of you who are familiar with that book. And it's no altruism. It's look at the accomplishment of man, right? Which is a beautiful thing, but it's at all costs. It's real Donald Trump-like, to where I don't care how this affects humanity. My personal achievement outweighs all of that, and where out west it is more communal, right? And it depends on where you are out west, but there's the hippie mentality, which can go too far left as well, but there is something we really are biologically more attuned to the communal aspects of ourselves, and the individualism that was really bred by consumerism, right? So it's not natural. And that's why we find ourselves having what people would call a midlife crisis. It's really just a mental breakdown. We have these throughout our lives because something that we're doing in this individualism, it really isn't in tune with our real nature. And when we talked about compassion as being the binding force of all that is, right? Like gravity is a force, compassion is the force that binds all things together. And if you believe that, which I do, and I believe in the consciousness first rather than material first. I'm not a materialist. I believe everything is sprung forth from consciousness. So if you believe that, then you can see clearly how what Sean's talking about, that individualism that really does stem from the East Coast and from London, right, from the UK. This is where the King James Bible, the version of the Bible, was created to control the masses, and it all kind of sprung forth from there into the New World, and then things got a little more laxed out west because a lot of those people were pushed out there because they weren't part of that, so they became the Sooners, you know what I mean, and they're the whole Grapes of Wrath, and then those people were broken down and poor and went out west looking for gold, and it became new money, so it wasn't so much blue blood, but they were forced to work together, and this is my idea of history, and how that happened, but there is a distinct difference in the geography of the way people are, and there is a difference in the South too, like Steve said, there's a difference for that farming mentality. Somebody who has to wait for harvest time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's different. It's a different way of thinking. But if you were a proponent of the Industrial Revolution, now, if it's not working now,
Everyone wants them. We got to crank them out.
now,
Yeah.
or we're gonna, because it's lacking limitation. It's lacking limitation. If we don't do it now, somebody else is going to do it now. Then there's not
I'm
enough
gonna miss
for me.
my opportunity.
Not enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about what you're talking about is, we're sort of looking at this like this is a new thing, but you mentioned the Industrial Revolution. It turns out there was a philosopher named Rousseau back in France in the 1700s. Like, I'm talking a long time ago. And he was talking about this exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The gratification, instant gratification because of the new machinery and, the new farming technologies and everything. And he was very adamant that he would look at, what he called the noble savages, which was, the American Indians and stuff like that. And he would say, look how happy they are. They don't have this big conglomerate corporation-led world, and they're just noble savages. They're very
Communal.
nice and communal.
Yeah.
And he looked at the rest of the world, especially where he was in France, and he's seen that people that held on to those fast growth things were miserable.
Western civilization, the conquerors.
Instant gratification.
Yeah.
Instant gratification. Rousseau said that it was bad 300, 400 years ago.
Well,
And it's only gotten faster and easier to get instant gratification.
Well, and look what it's done, honestly. So we talk about the New World. We stole this country. I didn't. And I don't think my ancestor did. I'm Sicilian, and German. So, I had no part in that. Maybe my consciousness did somewhere down the line. But look what that state of lack and limitation, which leads to the need for instant gratification, look what the atrocities that can lead to. You see it in the Holocaust with a guy like Hitler who was marginalized.
Lack of compassion.
Lack of compassion and lack for self too, because nobody cared for him, right? So how do I fill this void in me? Well, power, and somebody has to be the enemy. Somebody has to be. If I'm feeling lack and limitation, there's somebody else out there that can get that. There's got to be a reason for that. So let me point the finger there, and then because there's dopamine in aggression, right? There's dopamine there, and that's why people do it. You see it in American politics now. The real far left and the real far right, they're both assholes. And they're both. Jordan Peterson said it best. I went to one of his lectures not that long ago in San Diego, and he said, "Look, it's easy to hide behind the guise of altruism, right? Behind the guise of virtue. You can say that yes, it's gay people should be able to get married, and people should be able to love the way they want to. You can also say that if you don't believe that, you're a fucking asshole, and I deserve to marginalize and abuse you." And Jordan Peterson,
virtue signaling.
right? But it happens on both sides, right? And it's a lot easier to stand behind that when there is a moral high ground to stand behind. But he said, and this really resonated with me. You need to take a real hard look at yourself, and maybe in the aggression that you feel because of the moral high ground you believe you're standing on, maybe the aggression you feel is just because you're an asshole that likes to punch people, right? You got to think about that. You know, and what is that? That's instant gratification. There's dopamine. You don't think the way that I do. I have moral high ground here. I have the right to abuse you and attack you. In the same way that I say you don't have the right to abuse and attack these
Who's
other
the
people.
judge of the moral high ground, though?
That's the and it's you. It's the
I'll
individual.
be right back. Our listeners are saying the video is out, so we need to go grab one of them.
No, that's not
The
good.
sound is good, but video's out.
Okay. Steve's a lifesaver.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was, when I was thinking today, I was talking to my boy that passed away yesterday, and he was like, I don't got anywhere to go for Christmas and all this kind of shit. I'm like, dude, we're gonna go to my mom's. I'm like, we're gonna have prime rib dinner. It's all gonna be good. And the thing is, what he didn't understand is that with what he was trying to do with his career and where he wanted to go, like, relationships were all based on what can you do for me, and it was always like he never could see like the brotherhood I had for him. I didn't need anything.
Right.
I'm just a supporter.
Right.
I'm just here to guide you along the way. But I was looking at it today, and I was like, and I told one of my friends this. I was like, most relationships in like this dimension are relationships based on what I can get from that person.
Yeah.
There's not a real genuine like, Vinny, you need me to go get that neti pot for you and the Robust tea? I'll bring it to the house.
Right.
Like, you're like, no, man, I'm good. I got it. But like, I would have no problem doing that. I have no problem
For nothing in return.
For nothing in return.
Right.
I don't seek anything, but your betterment.
Yeah. And that's somewhat rare, right? And again, it's not everyone's fault because we are raised in consumerism and lack in limitation.
And there's an argument against altruism in its entirety. What you just said, like you go over to Vinny's house and you bring him some stuff to help him out with his cold.
Right.
You say you just did that out of the goodness of your heart. But the truth is, when you leave, you probably feel good, like, oh yeah, all right, I did a good thing for my buddy. I feel really good about that. To where you'll mention it to somebody else.
Well, that's codependence.
More like,
But
that's
that's
mind.
also
altruism.
that's also dopamine, right? It makes you feel good to help others.
My mind
so
would
it's
be
really
like-
hard to be truly altruistic. It's an old argument.
My
too.
mind would be like more like, man, I hope that shit works for him. Hope it clears up tonight.
Right, and
You
that
know?
is altruism. That's true altruism. And I know that argument. And Ayn Rand would be one, that would say that. Well, no, it's you jumped in front of the car to save that kid, not because you were acting selflessly, but because you would just feel horrible. And that's not true. That's not true. It can be true, but I know for me, like if I saw somebody in danger, it's just in my nature to do something about it, and even to the point where I could die, and nobody can pat me on the back for that. I'm in touch with compassion like that. I wasn't always, In fact, I might have even been a little bit of a sociopath before the age of 15, and I learned what that was. Didn't know any better, but I disagree. I do believe that there's altruism. But I do believe, I can agree that it's rare. I think most people that talk about paying it forward would like something in return, right? And because we're programmed that way, I really had to work to not want anything back. And that's what service is, right?
Yeah.
And recovery and anything else, you can't.
Just service in general. You can even take it out of the recovery context.
Just go feed that person, not because it feels good, but because you remember what the true definition of compassion is. It's sitting and suffering with another person, right? So compassionately, I see you out there struggling. I don't know what you're going to use this money for, and I don't give a shit. But it's not in me to not sit in that space with you once I've recognized you there. But there was a time in my life where I got dopamine from it. It's not there anymore, but I had to work hard to get to the place to where I didn't want something in return because I wasn't programmed to be altruistic. I just thought it was the right thing to do. But through those right actions, I started to not expect things in return, like Sean offering to bring that shit over. And I knew that you didn't want anything in return. There's nothing to gain there, right?
No, you've been sick for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to put a fucking end to this bullshit. You know, like you've been sick a little too long.
But you're also spiritually evolved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to Steve's point, it's see if I'm doing gobble gobble give, I want to post on social media because I know that there's a large group of people that I grew up with that don't think that way. But if you expose them to the fact that those things exist, well, they might go see what it feels like, and then maybe it's dopamine at first, and then eventually it's like, well, this is the right thing to do, right? And then you can also, on the flip side, you can post that I'm doing these great things because you want pats on the back.
Yeah, humble brag.
You want record, like a lot of the corporations that advertise all the good that they do.
And they do it at the year end when they need a tax write-off, and they just happen to give exactly the amount that they need the tax write-off.
Right.
Like, yeah, we totally bought turkeys for all these people. Isn't it amazing? We did this great thing, but it was literally for that help for themselves.
And I think that's a great thing to play on too. Yeah, corporations are greed driven. How do we get some of their money into the mouths of the hungry? You know what I mean? So I have no problem with playing on that because that's what they are. They're for profit, right?
It's a profit machine.
So if we can incentivize their greed and do something good with it, I don't have a problem with it. But we know it's bullshit, right? But it's not always. Some people, like a guy like Elon Musk, he just wants to do good things for the most part. He's kind of an asshole, right? And from what I know from people that have worked with him, and I don't know him personally, but he's somebody that wants to change the world for the better. Is that altruism, or is it that his seek for gratification? I don't know.
Altruism for me it's hard to identify in people, but it's very easy to argue away for me because we are animals and we do what is best for ourselves. That's what we're programmed to do, all the way down to our DNA and our reptile mind. And
that's refutable too.
Absolutely.
The Darwin approach.
I think anything can be refuted. Like if you say you're just doing this for one reason, if we dig far enough, I can always find another way to explain why you're doing it, even if you don't realize it yourself.
How about?
Well,
I don't know how
from
that fits into
from your perception.
So
Because it's only your
it could
perception.
be absolutely. It could be instant gratification though, of a type somehow, some way.
No, you can always find a way that it would be, but it will always be from your perception. And for me, there was a long time where I didn't believe altruism existed because it didn't exist in me. So it just can't. So and I don't know if you. I think a lot of addicts do this. We project, right? So if I'm doing, then everybody must be doing, and that's how you rationalize the things that you do because I do, so they must. I think this way, so they must. And that's why I couldn't find the relationships always mirrored what was going on inside me. Romantic relationships and friend relationships were never really close. We were there, but it was kind of, we needed things from each other, and it was this cycle, right? And I would have argued against, and I did argue against altruism. I thought everything was selfishly motivated. I would have leaned more towards Darwinism than I do now, but I see life differently. So, and maybe that's just subjective, but to me, that in transcendental moments and peak experiences, I think I've been exposed to a truth that I can't deny, because I really would like to deny it, because to live that, at least try to walk that spiritual high ground, it's in complete antithesis to what society wants us to do, and it's fucking hard. You know what I mean? It's hard and it's daily work. I don't want to work that hard. I just want to live. I want to be happy, right? I want instant gratification. I don't play video games now, but I just want to sit down and do that, and I want to binge watch Netflix, and I just want to be happy, and I want a job that pays the bills enough, and I just want to be fucking happy. I really don't want to work to raise my kids. I just want them to be happy too. I don't want to teach them the hard lessons. I'm different now, so I can argue.
We've got 5 minutes.
But again, it's all perspective. So do we? wish I had 15. Did the video ever come back up?
It's Facebook. It's lagging. It's
Okay. No, sorry about that, guys, but you know the audio. We'll post the audio and we'll keep it gangster. But maybe you can see this. Maybe you can't. We're in our last 5 minutes, but Sean brought his book in. I just bought mine as well. This is the Mastermind Journal. For those of you who aren't, this is a Renaissance Unity thing. It's spread far beyond Renaissance Unity.
But it started with Renaissance. It started with Church of Today, which turned into Renaissance Unity. This is a Jack Boland thing, and you know it ended up going and getting in the hands of Wayne Dyer and the rest of them, and that like the idea of mastermind journaling is pretty much gone all through. Like,
What's the power? It's the power. It's based on the premise, and it's a Christ teaching. But you go to Buddha, you go to anybody else, and you talk about when you make an agreement with another person. Christ says, "Where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am." So the concept of the mastermind is that you get with a group of people and you mastermind, basically. And the mastermind can be whatever. It can be God, it can be the universe, it can be this force greater than yourself that you know it's bigger than you, right? And you sit with a group of like minds who maybe not even like minds, but people that agree to hold what you would like to achieve or manifest.
goals, healing, you name it, you can put it in the book.
And our job with each other is to hold each other in that higher consciousness, not to sit there and say, well, that's not possible, or that is possible, or to debate it, or to offer guidance in that whatever it is you want to manifest. It's that I see that for you. I see that for you, and I really hold you in the highest light. You leave the meeting. You're supposed to do it weekly, but it can be however. And each of the members leave the meeting holding each of the other members in that high light. And it's all based on the power of thinking, the law of attraction.
Just a quick note. You get out what you put in. It's the name of the game. I've been doing this a long time.
Not a wishing well.
It's not a wishing well. I've been doing this a long time. I started originally in 07, 08. I had a group, and then it just kind of disbanded. And I carried on for a year by myself, and then I put it down. And then I ended up sponsoring this dude who ended up pretty much being one of my brothers. And he saw the Mastermind Journal from 2012 and my Jeep that I had at the time, and he was like, "What's this?" "Ah, man, it's Mastermind Journal." And it was actually like a year old. He was like, "Well, can I have it?" Because we had just done 4T Prosperity. And I was like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "You're going to be off by one day, but fuck it, man. Go have at it." About 4 or 5 months later, he comes back to me. He's like, "You're supposed to be doing this with somebody." And I was like, "You want to, get into the journaling?" And we got into it and been journaling ever since. Me and him take breaks. Sometimes we do our journal on our own. We always meet up for the monthly, and then, periodically, sometimes we'll do it over the phone. There's so many different ways you can do it. And, but I will say one thing, it's a game changer.
We'll be posting more information on the page, the link where you can get it. It's a beautiful guidebook, like Sean said. You get what you put into it, but you feel something different immediately. Like, even if you don't believe fully in the concept that where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am, or manifestation, if you don't believe it, when you sit with people who reiterate your deepest, I don't want to call it desire, but whatever it is you want to manifest, they don't question it. They just look at you and say, I see that for you. And you know that they mean it. It does something to it. It does something to the air in the room.
I'd also like to point out that a lot of people have, friends and gatherings and stuff that they go to. And you'll probably go to these gatherings and you'll say, "Hey, Vinny, what are you up to? Hey, Sean, what are you up to? How do you feel today? Blah, blah, blah." But you never get past that sort of just talking about shit that happened during the week.
Yeah.
Just
Small talk.
really small talk or medium talk, but you never get into the big talk. And I found that the people that don't sit down with a friend or a loved one and get into the big talk, like what you guys are describing, are usually miserable because they don't have anybody that they can actually truly open up to.
And you feel disconnected. You're alienated because again, compassion being the binding force, we seek that deep human connection. We need it. We need it.
And you can do that through the power of the mastermind journal, like these guys are saying.
Not to rinse the
Really nice
gratification.
idea.